Now that we have a new user and we're displaying the sign up component, let's build out its structure. So we want to provide a form with an input where a user can set their new username on the first time that they sign in. So let's go into the sign up page, and we're going to begin with a div with the class of sign up container. Within that will be a header, the class name of sign up header, and in that will be a div, the class sign up header title, and the text sign. Then if we go one level up, as a sibling of the header element, we're going to have a form with the class name signup form. And that will be a div with the class name signup form inner. And that will be a container for the div signup form title. So I'll have a title at the top above the input with the text create username. And then as a sibling to that, we'll have a div with the class name signup input. Within this div, we're going to have the input itself with no class, but afterwards we'll have a div with the class signup error icon. And if we go one level up again, we're going to have a div that's going to display the signup error text. So we'll display some error text here if there is an error during signup. And the text for that is going to be this username is taken. This is something that we're going to conditionally display. Then let's go 2 levels up and create a button with the class name sign up submit with the text sign up. And actually we'll put the button within the closing form tag just like that. And we can add a couple more attributes to our input. On top of it having a type of text, we'll give it the name email. On top of having the type text, we'll give it the placeholder username. And let's save and take a look. Good, so we're displaying our error text right now. We're going to conditionally display this according to some state. And this state, using useState once again, will by default be false. We're going to call this isTaken. Setter will be setTaken. So if isTaken is true, just wrap this div in a conditional and say if isTaken is true. Actually, can cut down on our code by just conditionally displaying the text. We'll have a conditional here that says if isTaken is true, then we'll display the string this username is taken. Otherwise, you can always change this later as the default text. Additionally, we want to conditionally display a class next to signup input. This is how we're going to display this signup error icon at the end that we can't currently see. But we're going to use a template literal to say by default the class is going to be signup input, and we'll use a ternary within it where if isTaken is true, we will add the class signup error. Otherwise, nothing. So if I just reverse the value of isTaken, we're going to be able to see that we're going to have a little warning here, and the text is going to be set to red. This is all possible with the signup error text. And then finally, we actually want to be able to disable this button at the bottom if isTaken is true. So we want to set disabled to isTaken. And once again, if we reverse the value of it, we can see what that will look like to make it impossible to click sign up. Now what's the next step? Well, we're getting our user data from sign up, but we want to do a little work with it. We want to format it into a default username to be able to display here. So the way that we can do that is with the help of useEffect. We want to first check and make sure we have a user. So if we have a user, we'll set user as a dependency here and add an if statement if user. Then we want to say in the console user authenticated, and we want to set a default username. And we can do so by bringing in the remove white space function from the libvalidate file. It's just going to remove any white space that there might be on this user's display name. So we can get a good default username for them from user.display name. And then what we can do is we can set that username in state. So let's create a piece of state that by default is an empty string. We'll call this username. Setter will be set username. And so with this default username, we can populate our input. We can do that by making this a controlled form. We can remove the action. For our input, we can set its default value according to what's in the username state. So we set value to username. We might need to sign in again. Oh, I'm sorry, it should be actually just user.displayName. Okay, good. So we see our display name here. Any white space is going to be removed using this function that I've already included for you. And we set the username and state to make sure that the user has something to be able to change if they want to. Now, they can't change it currently. So why is that? Well, we haven't set up an event handler for it, in particular for the change event. So we want to add an onChange to our input. And this is really simple. All we have to do is just take the event and set the state according to what is typed in. So we want to call setUser once again, and we get what's typed in from event or e.target.value, just like that. This is pretty standard basic React, and so we can change this to whatever we want. Now, what is important about this is that we do want to check to make sure that our username is a valid one and that it meets some criteria. So we're going to once again have a check username function here. But what's going to happen is that we will check it as the user types into the input. So once again, we're going to use effect, and we are going to run this function within use effect according to when username changes. So we have a few conditions that we want to meet. But the first thing that once again is wise to do, because the user can still type white space here, is that we want to remove any white space from the username that the user's typed in. So we're going to once again pass user to remove white space, and we'll just put it in a variable called u. And then if we have some value here, a non-falsy value, a truthy value, then we want to call a new function check username. And since we have u, or the username, as a global variable, we don't need to pass any arguments to this new check username function. We'll create this function right here within useEffect. And like I mentioned, we're going to have some conditions. One constraint that I'm going to put for our username is that we want to set it between a certain number of characters. So we want it to be a minimum of 3 characters and a maximum of 20 characters. Now all we need to do for that, to ensure that, is to add a simple if statement. So if u.length is greater than or equal to 3 and user.length is less than or equal to 20, then we want to actually perform the check against our usernames collection to see if this is taken or not, if this username was taken or not. So once again, we're going to need to bring in our database. And the way to check and see if a particular document exists in a database is using not the collections, or rather the collection method, it's the doc method. So we just need to provide a / separated path to a document. So in this case, we can simply say usernames / because every username is going to be prefixed with the @ symbol, and then whatever the user typed in, whatever's in the u variable. So once again, we're creating a reference. This is a username reference, but we can just call this ref. And we want to await, so we need to make check username an async function, await ref.get. And once again, we're going to get back a query snapshot. We just want the empty, or rather the exists property. So we're going to set taken, that Boolean value that we created as the first piece of state. We're going to set that according to, once again, exists. So what's important here is that for each of our username documents, you can see that not only are we going to be storing the user's ID, but we're going to be storing on each document their specific username that they chose to make sure that we don't let other users choose one that's already been taken. So for example, if we had in our usernames collection a document ID at readBarger, and we could add just a user ID as a field. If we had that, what we can now do is we can type into our input, and if it's taken, we now see in real time our error message, our error icon, the text is red, that indicates a problem for our user, and our button is disabled. Perfect. And we're also not going to be checking this against our database if it's less than 3 or greater than 20 characters. Now, we need to add that constraint when we hit sign up to make sure it's not possible to create a username outside of those constraints, but we'll do that in just a second.